Can anyone hear me now? If anyone can hear me, just let me know in the comments. All right, perfect. So, welcome to the second episode of our live streaming series. My name is Ahmed Thabit, and today we will explore together the eternal below and the WannaCry analysis in a high level and a quick analysis. And today's agenda will be as follows. We will start by briefly explain what is the SMB and why it always on the security news. And then we will talk about the eternal below, and we will proceed from what Mr. Hisham explained in the last session. And of course, if you missed that session, you can find it on the LinkedIn page or the YouTube channel. And next, we will talk about WannaCry and its implementation of the eternal below. And finally, we will answer the ultimate question of the blue team, how to identify, detect, and mitigate the threat of eternal below. I hope you enjoyed this session. So let's start. So before we delve into the technical details, let's start with the basics. What exactly is the SMP? Well, SMB stands for Server Message Protocol, Server Message Block. And it's a network protocol that is widely used for sharing file, printers, and many other resources between computers in the network. You can think of this protocol as the language that computers use to communicate with each other on the network. And SMB, as I said, enable sharing and collaboration between multiple devices, and you can run the SMB on the Windows and Linux and even Mac OS. And that what makes SMB is very powerful and in the same time makes it a valuable target from the adversaries and attackers. So before we continue, let me show you how actually the SMB works. Sorry. So this is my PC, and these are the partitions of my hard disk that exist on the machine I use. And this is another partition that is not listed with this partition on my hard disk. If I open this partition, you can see that it has files and folders that I can explore. I can create a new file. I can even delete that file, and I can alter any data in these files. I can copy data from and to this partition. But as I said, partition is not listed with my other partitions because it's not actually on my hard disk. This partition is listed under the network location because this files and this data actually exist on another host on the network, and I can access this data and I can delete and perform action and operation on these data because there is MP. So this is simply what the SMP does, sharing file and resources through networks. And here, the machine I talk about that is using the SMB shares its file to my machine. And if I disconnect my machine from this network, or I disconnect the other machine that is using the SMB, of course, I will no longer can access this data. So this is the SMB protocol. But why always the SMB is on the news? For those who don't know, uh, over the years, the SMB protocol has had a poor security track record. Multiple bugs and vulnerabilities has been discovered in this protocol from its early days, from Microsoft 2000s and Microsoft Windows XP to the vulnerabilities that we will talk about today. So it will be fair for someone to say that SMB had have so many weaknesses, and maybe it still has. And one of the reasons for this poor record, sorry, comes from the complexity of the implementation of the protocol and also from the open nature of the SMP protocol. So, as you know, complexity in software introduce a higher risk of mistakes and oversights during development, which of course can lead to exploitable security flaw. And this is why SMB has always uh, discovered in so many flaws. And our story today will be just another episode in a long series of these SMB vulnerabilities and weaknesses. So our story began back in nearly 2012 when the NSA, which stands for the National Security Agency, it's an intelligence agency based in the United States, they discovered three bugs in the SMB protocol, and they didn't stop at there. They proceed to develop an exploit that can chain these three bugs and make an exploit that named Eternal Blue, and it can chain these three bugs to achieve RCE, which stands for remote code execution, which gives the attacker the full control over the victim machine, and the attacker can run any code on the victim machine. This exploit or tool were named Eternal Blue, as I said, and Mr. Hisham already demonstrated this in the last week's session, and he showed how to use Metasploit to perform this exploit in the previous live session. As I said, you can find it on the LinkedIn page or the YouTube channel. So this is how the Eternal Blue was born. And the most important part in this story, at least for me, is that NSA didn't alert Microsoft about this vulnerability, as usual. So after 5 years, a whole 5 years of discovering these vulnerabilities and maybe using it by the NSA, they finally warned Microsoft. And this is because they know that this tool, the Eternal Blue exploit, have been leaked from their database, and United States agencies doesn't like to have partners. And immediately Microsoft prepared a patch for this issue and released it in March 2017, and many Windows users hadn't installed that patch as usual. And after 1 month of the patch, the group Shadow Brokers released the tool and made it publicly. And you and Mr. Hisham already talked about this in the last session. And after less than a month, the WannaCry attack starts, and it was using the Eternal Blue to spread over network, and we will come to this in a while. So here I will just show a high level of what actually happening when the adversary use the exploit and what kind of traffic you can expect between the attacker and the target machines. This is a screenshot from Wireshark, which, as you know, a popular tool to sniff and intercept network traffic. Here we can see the IP with the host with the IP that ends with 222 is sending an SMB request to this IP that ends with 202, and this request is this request type is of the trans request. Sorry about that. And if you intercept the details of this request, you can find two interesting notes. The first one is the size of this packet is this number, about 66,512. And in a matter of fact, this is the maximum number or the maximum size that this packet can be. And the second note is, even though the packet is too large, it's actually empty. And even if you never heard about Eternal Blue, or you never saw it in details, you know that such two indicators is a very strong indicator that there's something malicious or suspicious, as at least, happening on the network. And actually, this is the first stage of the Eternal Blue exploit. The attacker sends this request that has the maximum size and it's empty, and it's he trying to exploit something like memory corruption or buffer overflow. And after this request, he sent another two requests. Their type is trans2, and this time he has the payload that he wants to execute on the victim machine, and whatever in this payload will be executed on the victim machine. And this is how you can use the Eternal Blue to achieve a remote code execution on the vulnerable machine that use the SMB version 1. So what about the WannaCry? As I said, it was one of the most significant and damaging attacks in history. Actually, it affected more than 300,000 computers across 150 countries, with a total damages that estimated to be ranging from hundreds of millions to billions of dollars. And in a moment, we will see why this attack was has spread so much. And after 3 months of the attack, the United States and the United Kingdom formally asserted that the Lazarus Group was behind the attack, and the Lazarus Group is a North Korea-based group. And North Korea, on the other hand, of course, denied their responsibility for the attack. Now I'm supposed to make a live demo of WannaCry sample and intercept its traffic in real time, but I had some technical issues with my malware analysis machine. So I will rely only on these screenshots of a real traffic from a machine that actually infected by ransomware. And if anyone after this session thought that this wasn't enough, please let me know in the comment if we need another session that we run the WannaCry sample. And so, as I said, this is a snapshot from a local machine that has the ransomware WannaCry run on it, and it's from the program TCP view that represent the connection that is currently active or even that closed on this host. Here you can see that all the connections on the host are made by the process named WannaCry, and it's all from this local address. And you can see here in the remote port that all the connections are made to the port number 445, and this is the port number that SMB works on. And I hope you take a look at this records and remote address, and let me know in the comment what you are noticing about this, what you think that is happening here in this traffic. So this is actually a typical behavior that WannaCry make after they run on a host. It tries to brute force every host in the network in the hope that this host is running a vulnerable version from SMB. You can hear the connections with the red color is the connection that is closed, and this is mean that this host, which is a different host, the WannaCry didn't find any SMB server running on these hosts, so it's closed the connection. And in the other host, they probably find an SMB server running on this host, and when it find this server, it immediately start exploiting the vulnerability in this host using the eternal blue kit. So if we run Wireshark and intercept the connection that is happening in these all open connection, we will find this exact pattern. We will find that WannaCry process is sending a trans request that is empty and that it has this size, and then it will send the payload. And payload in this case will be the ransomware itself, will be the WannaCry itself. So here, WannaCry is looking for any vulnerable server or any vulnerable host, and then copy itself to this host and then run itself. And this is how it is spread, and this is how it propagates itself. And this is why this attack cause this much of damage and this level of spread in just under 1 day, because SMB is very popular and very common in any office and any organization network, and with many users that didn't install the patches. Of course, WannaCry has a very easy way to spread over all these networks. Right. Now we know in a high level how the eternal below, as we said, we are looking for an SMB trans request that is large and that is empty, and then we are looking for two trans requests that have the payload that the attacker wants to execute on the victim machine. Now, how to detect this is how to detect this attack, but how to mitigate this attack, how to protect ourselves and our organization from such exploit and attack. Of course, the most convenient way is to patch and update our systems, because if we update our system, if we stop using an older system that is out of support, like Windows XP and Windows 7, we will protect ourselves from this exact attack, because in the Windows 8 and higher, this attack is mitigated because SMB version 1 is closed. And this is our second point, which is if we can't update the system for any reason, we can just disable the version 1 of the SMB. And of course, if we are in an organization, we have to make a regular vulnerability assessments that will discover any sign of this vulnerability, and we can then uh, mitigate and patch this vulnerability. But what if we can do either of this? Uh, there will be multiple scenario when we have in our work a machine that work in Windows XP or 7 or even older Windows, and uh, we can't update this machine, or even we can't patch this machine, because sometimes this machine the business can't afford that this machine stop for even 1 minute. So the machine have to work and you have to do your job. So you can't update, you can patch, but you can work around this by making or segmenting your network to make yeah, to make the life of any attacker harder to exploit and to reach that machine. You can use and rely on network solutions such as firewall and IPS, and these solutions know exactly the signature of the eternal blue we were talking about, and they immediately identified and prevented. And on the host level, we can use any antivirus or anti-malware or even ADR. These tools are also know exactly the signature of the eternal blue, and it can prevent uh, the danger of this exploit. And of course, with a larger network and larger environment, we should monitoring and logging every activity that happening in the network. And of course, we need to know the signature and how the eternal below works, or even or else we would never be able to identify. So that's all. And if anyone has any question, please feel free to ask. So anyone has a question regarding what we have talked about regarding the eternal blue or the mitigation process? You're welcome. Okay, that's all today. And please wait us for us in the next session with a new topics in both red team and blue team. Thanks for your time, and